The night pressed in, a heavy, suffocating weight, even before the storm truly broke. Eric Delgado, a 32-year-old night shift food delivery driver, felt it profoundly. He'd sought refuge in the solitary rhythm of rural deliveries, a deliberate avoidance of cities and people, haunted by a child's traumatic accident from his paramedic past. This Friday in late fall, the constant cold rain had turned nearby rivers into raging torrents, forcing him onto Cold Hollow Pass, a rural detour he instinctively disliked, a road known for its quiet, unsettling secrets. His old pickup truck, his mobile office and sanctuary rattled over potholes, the only light coming from his high beams, cutting weak swaths through the gathering gloom. Eric was cynical, cautious, a man who followed his gut, but often doubted his sanity after years of witnessing the raw, unfiltered trauma of human suffering. He knew these backroads were notorious, dotted with forgotten farms, dense woods, and abandoned rail tracks, each holding its own whispered secrets, especially on nights like this. The rain intensified, hammering against the windshield, a deafening drumbeat that swallowed the world outside. Eric gripped the steering wheel tighter, his knuckles white, his eyes straining against the poor visibility. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, a primal aroma that hinted at the ancient, untamed wilderness pressing in on either side of the narrow road, a presence that seemed to grow with the storm. Ahead through the sheets of rain, the silhouette of the covered bridge at Wicker's Bend emerged, a dark, hulking presence against the stormy sky. It had stood for over 150 years, a single-lane wooden tunnel rumored to be haunted. Local legend whispered that those who looked into their mirrors while crossing it sometimes saw passengers they never picked up. A chilling thought Eric had always dismissed as superstitious nonsense, until now as he approached the entrance. A sudden, inexplicable chill permeated the cab, a cold that seeped into his bones despite the heater blasting. The humming of his truck's engine seemed to deepen, taking on a low, almost mournful hum. He felt an odd compulsion to slow down, to drive with an unnatural caution, as if the very road was warning him, or perhaps beckoning him forward. His headlights, cutting through the swirling rain, briefly illuminated the interior of the bridge. The ancient timbers dripped with moisture, reflecting the light in distorted patterns that seemed to writhe and shift. He felt a strange sense of anticipation, a tightening in his gut that had nothing to do with the treacherous driving conditions, and everything to do with the bridge's whispered reputation. As he exited the bridge, the rain intensified further, a sudden blinding deluge. He squinted, peering through the sheets of water, and that's when he saw her. Standing in the middle of the road, directly in his path, was a woman, soaked to the bone, her dark hair plastered to her face, her clothes clinging to her impossibly. Thin frame. She was barefoot in the cold rain, her presence a stark, impossible silhouette against the storm. His paramedic instincts, buried deep under layers of cynicism and trauma, resurfaced. A woman, alone, in this weather, on this road? Against his better judgment, against every warning his cautious nature screamed, his foot eased off the brake. He pulled up beside her, rolling down the passenger window a crack, the cold, wet air instantly flooding the cab, bringing with it an ancient metallic scent. She didn't speak. Her face, pale and drawn, was turned towards him, her eyes dark and unreadable. Her lips were a thin, straight line, but her hand, impossibly slender, slowly lifted, her fingers curling into a silent gesture for a ride. There was no desperation in her eyes, no plea, just a quiet, unnerving expectation that chilled him more than the biting wind. A silent demand. Eric hesitated, his gut screaming at him, but his ingrained helpfulness, especially towards women or children in distress, overrode his caution. He reached across, unlatching the passenger door. The woman moved with a strange, almost fluid grace, sliding into the seat beside him. A wave of icy cold permeated the cab, bringing with it the scent of wet earth and something else, something ancient and metallic, a smell that clung to the air. The woman pulled the door shut with a soft click, and the silence that followed was profound, broken only by the drumming of the rain on the roof and the labored hum of his truck's engine. She didn't shiver, didn't thank him, didn't even look at him. Her gaze was fixed straight ahead, through the rain-streaked windshield, her profile stark against the gloom, an unsettlingly still presence beside him. Then her voice came, a low, raspy whisper that seemed to vibrate through the very fabric of the truck, cutting through the drumming rain outside. It was the only sentence she would utter, a chilling command that froze his blood. Don't look at me until we pass the second bridge. Eric's skepticism warred with a sudden, overwhelming wave of unease. The drive continued, the rain intensifying, the roads ahead twisting into an impenetrable, terrifying maze. He gripped the steering wheel, his eyes fixed on the road. Ahead, now an indistinguishable blur of rain and darkness. The rural detour had become a labyrinth, the familiar landmarks of Cold Hollow Pass seeming to vanish, replaced by an endless tunnel of dripping trees and swirling mist, each turn leading him deeper into the unknown, further from any hope of escape. The rain outside grew worse, a torrential downpour that hammered against the truck, making it feel like a tiny, fragile boat adrift in a vast, dark ocean. The roads became more twisted, narrower, barely more than muddy tracks leading deeper into the desolate woods. The rare cabins and flickering street lamps he had passed earlier were now long gone, swallowed by the oppressive darkness, deepening. his isolation sealing him in dot, and then he noticed it. The woman's breathing. It was growing louder. Not the soft, rhythmic inhale and exhale of a sleeping person, but a deep, guttural rasp, like dry leaves being dragged across rough stone. It filled the cab, heavy and unnatural, seeming to emanate from all around him, not just from the seat beside him, but from the very air itself, a hungry, waiting presence. Eric's cynicism, his carefully constructed shield of logic, began to crack. He tried to rationalize the sound of the storm, the old truck's ventilation, his own frayed nerves. But the sound was too distinct, too unsettlingly alive. It pulsed with an ancient rhythm, a hungry, waiting presence that raised the hairs on his arms, a chilling premonition of what was to come, the temptation to glance at her, to break her strange command became almost unbearable. His eyes darted towards the rearview mirror, then quickly away, fighting the primal urge to confirm what his gut was screaming at him. What would he see? The same pale face? Or something else, something monstrous, reflecting in the dim light of the dashboard? A horror beyond his comprehension? The air in the cab, despite the heater blasting, felt impossibly cold and damp, a chill that seeped into his bones. He could feel the pervasive wetness, not just from the rain outside, but from the woman beside him, a cold, clammy presence that seemed to radiate from her, filling the small space with an unnatural chill that clung to him like a shroud, a constant, chilling reminder. His past trauma, the accident involving the child, began to resurface, vivid and agonizing. The whispers of his own guilt, usually buried deep, now seemed to mingle with the strange, guttural breathing beside him. He felt a profound vulnerability, a sense of being utterly exposed, his emotional fragility laid bare for whatever entity shared his cab, feeding on his fear and regret. Each passing minute stretched into an eternity. The darkness outside the truck deepening, the rain's roar becoming a constant, oppressive presence. The woman's breathing grew louder, more insistent, a hungry, rasping sound that filled the cab, pressing in on him, urging him towards the inevitable moment when he would finally glance in the mirror, when the unspoken command would be broken. The anticipation of the second bridge became a desperate, terrifying hope. He clung to it, a fragile anchor in the storm of his unraveling sanity. It was a landmark, a point of no return, a promise of either escape or a terrifying revelation. He strained his eyes, peering through the rain-streaked windshield, searching for any sign of its familiar silhouette, his heart a frantic drumbeat in his chest. The second bridge finally appeared, a dark, skeletal silhouette against the swirling rain, its wooden frame looming out of the darkness like a monstrous maw. It was not a beacon of hope, but a terrifying landmark, a gateway to the unknown. Eric's heart hammered against his ribs. A frantic drumbeat in the oppressive silence of the cab, broken only by the woman's unnaturally loud breathing. Now a guttural roar. His hand trembled as he gripped the steering wheel. This was it. The moment of truth. Against the chilling command, against every fiber of his being that screamed, "Don't look," his eyes flickered upwards, drawn by an irresistible, morbid compulsion. He glanced into the rearview mirror, his breath hitched in his throat, bracing himself for the horror he expected to see, for the face that would finally reveal itself. The back seat was empty. Eric's mind reeled. He slammed on the brakes, the truck skidding violently on the slick road, coming to a jarring halt just past the bridge's halfway point. He twisted in his seat, frantically scanning the back of the cab. Nothing. The passenger seat was empty too. The woman was gone, vanished, as if she had never been there at all. A phantom in the storm, leaving only a chilling void. But then he saw them. Wet footprints. Distinctly human, but impossibly long and slender, pressed into the thin layer of condensation on the back seats. They led from the passenger door, across the back seat, and then, chillingly, up the back of the driver's seat. His blood ran cold, a wave of pure, unadulterated terror washing over him. A realization that defied all logic. And then the most horrifying detail. More wet footprints, leading down the windshield. From the top, slowly, deliberately, leaving. Clear, dripping trails on the glass, as if something had crawled down from the roof of the truck, or perhaps from the very air itself. Directly in front of his eyes, a silent, horrifying descent. Panic, cold and sharp, clawed at his throat. He fumbled for the gear shift, desperate to move, to escape. But the truck remained stubbornly unresponsive, its engine idling with a low, mocking hum. The rain outside intensified, hammering against the windshield, blurring the horrifying footprints, as if trying to erase the evidence of the impossible, to swallow the truth. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. The woman was never in the car in the conventional sense. She had been on the car. Or perhaps she was the rain itself, a manifestation of the storm, a chilling entity that had chosen to ride with him, unseen, unheard, until this terrifying moment of revelation. Until he was ready to see the local legend of Wicker's Bend Bridge, of passengers never picked up, now twisted into a grotesque reality. It wasn't about seeing them in the mirror. It was about them being there all along, unseen, unheard, until they chose to reveal their presence in the most horrifying way possible. The bridge was a trigger, a point of no return. A gateway to a truth beyond human comprehension. His eyes darted frantically from the empty back seat to the dripping footprints on the windshield, then to the dark, rain-lashed woods outside. The cold, wet presence he had felt earlier was still there, pervasive, suffocating. The woman's breathing, though no longer audible, seemed to echo in his mind, a silent, hungry rasp that filled the cab, a chilling symphony of his unraveling. Sanity. He knew with a chilling certainty that the second bridge wasn't just a landmark, it was a boundary. And by looking in the mirror, by breaking her command, he had not escaped her. He had merely opened his eyes to the horrifying truth. And now the rain, and whatever rode within it, had him. Eric screamed, a raw, guttural sound that was swallowed by the sudden deafening roar of the rain, which now seemed to batter the truck with malevolent force. He fumbled with the door handle, desperate to escape, but it was jammed, locked tight. The truck, still idling, began to move forward slowly, inexorably, driving deeper into the desolate woods. Off any known road, its headlights cutting a futile path into the impenetrable darkness, leading him to his inevitable fate. The cold, wet presence he had felt earlier was no longer just pervasive. It was inside the truck, seeping into every crevice, permeating every cell of his body. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and that metallic, ancient smell, now overwhelming, suffocating. He could feel the chill, the wetness, as if the very rain itself had materialized within the cab, swirling around him like a living entity, an unseen passenger taking hold. The woman's breathing, though still silent, was now all around him, a chilling, hungry rasp that echoed in his skull, resonating with the drumming rain on the roof. He saw fleeting glimpses of shadowy forms in the corners of his vision, their figures indistinct, their movements slow and deliberate, merging with the swirling mist inside the cab, their faces contorted by a shared, horrifying ecstasy, a silent, grotesque dance. His sanity, already hanging by a thread, unraveled completely. He pounded on the windows, screamed until his throat was raw, but no sound escaped the confines of the truck, swallowed by the roar of the rain and the silent, pervasive presence within. He was trapped, a prisoner in his own vehicle, driven by an unseen, malevolent force deeper into the heart of Cold Hollow Pass, a journey with no end. As the truck continued its relentless, slow crawl, Eric glanced into the rearview mirror again. And this time, he saw them. Not just the empty backseat, but reflections. Faint, shimmering figures, their faces gaunt, their eyes hollow, sitting silently in the back, their forms distorted by the rain-streaked glass. They were the passengers. They never picked up, the victims of Wicker's Bend, now riding with him, their numbers growing with each passing moment. A silent, spectral congregation. The truck finally stopped. Not on a road, but in a desolate, overgrown clearing, surrounded by ancient, gnarled trees that seemed to lean in, their branches dripping with rain. The engine sputtered, then died, plunging the world into absolute darkness, broken only by the incessant drumming of the rain and the faint, eerie glow of the spectral passengers in his rearview mirror. A final horrifying tableau. The chilling implication of "don't look at me until we pass the second bridge" finally clicked into place with horrifying clarity. It wasn't about her not wanting to be seen. It was about him not being ready to see. The second bridge was the point of no return, the threshold beyond which the truth of Cold Hollow Pass was fully revealed. And the absorption began, a terrifying, irreversible transformation. He felt a cold, slender hand touch his shoulder. He froze, unable to move, unable to breathe. The voice, her voice, soft and raspy, whispered directly into his ear, no longer a command, but a chilling welcome. "Welcome home, Eric." The rain outside intensified, hammering against the truck, a final deafening crescendo, sealing his fate. The last thing Eric Delgado saw was his own reflection in the rearview mirror, his eyes wide with terror, his face gaunt. But then, his features began to blur, to stretch, to merge with the shimmering forms of the other passengers in the back. His skin grew pale. His eyes became black and fathomless, and a crooked smile, unnatural and wide, slowly spread across his face. The truck sat silent and empty in the rain-drenched clearing, its windows fogged, its doors locked. The rain continued to fall, ceaseless, relentless, a constant presence on Cold Hollow Pass, and sometimes, on a particularly stormy night, if a traveler was brave enough to glance into their mirror while crossing the covered bridge at Wickers Bend, they might just see a new, gaunt face among the spectral passengers, an unblinking gaze, waiting for the next lost soul to wander onto the highway.